Good morning. Here we are with another project. Today we're going to be looking at a early 70s Gibson SG Special. This was purchased by one of my regular customers. eBay purchase. And it seems to have a few problems. First of all, while not being one of the worst refrets I've ever seen, this one gets us in there pretty close. One of the first things I ran into here, while he was hoping to get just a fret dress and a setup to get him through, if we look really close here, some of the frets don't even come to the end of the binding. Some of the frets are not put in straight, they're actually leaning to the sides. It's really hard to get a look at this, but you gotta love the file marks on the side of the binding. That was the good side. Let's take a look at the treble side. Oh, did you hear that? Wait a minute. Can't wait to see what that is. Something loose in the control cavity. If we look over here and take a close look at the ends of the frets, those are not file marks. Those are raw, rough nipper marks. Got these little daggers sticking out on the sides of the frets. Just waiting to slice you up. I've marked off some of the really hideous frets, and if we look close here, we'll see some of those really weren't seated in the fingerboard very well. And more file marks on the top of the frets. Got to really grind good on those. If we go up here to this end, the nut was cut very poorly. Some of the strings are off as much as for 32 of an inch in spacing, and they're randomly cut height wise. The high E is actually nearly laying on the first fret. The tuners have been changed, which that's okay if necessary. The original ones are in the case, so we'll go check them out too. These guitars don't have a lot of popularity because people can't really appreciate them. They're actually a pretty cool guitar. If you look back, it's not hard to find a whole lot of YouTube videos of guys playing them. I saw Carlos Santana playing one in his early years. There's an Edgar Winter, I believe it's Frankenstein video, that shows a very young Ronnie Montrose pounding away on one in the back. So I've always had a soft spot for P90s. Kind of love them. But getting back to this job, we're going to take care of the fretwork, see if we can disguise this new pickup cover, find out what the rattle is in the control cavity, and we're going to replace the original tremolo, or vibrola as Gibson called it, and get this thing back to its original status. We're going to up the cool factor a lot on this guitar. So that's it for right now. We're going to get on with the refret, find out what's wrong with the electronics, and we'll catch up later. Okay, I can't take it. Let's check out the electronics and see what that rattle is. Let's see. Don't see anything obvious. Let's give it a shake. Ah, There we go. There we go. Hang on. Right down in here is a nut. And that looks suspiciously like a nut off of the missing bolts on a P90. See, this one has two mounting bolts holding, if it look right here. Of course, we've got the pole pieces, and here we have the height adjustment screws. So depending on how these are fastened down, sometimes these bolts are actually holding the pickup together, which is the case with this one because we've got the height adjustment screws out here. They're not screws here, it's bolts like you've got in a humbucker. So, mystery on that solved. We'll have to dig into that pickup and see what's actually holding it together. Curious about that now, but let's get this torn down and get into this fret job. We've moved to the neck jig. I have the guitar all set up and jigged up, ready to start the prep work for the fingerboard. But I wanted to point out a couple things. The deeper I get into this job, the more I find there's a truly amateur job or somebody who's just really in a hurry. And this is very hard to show you, but we're going to try. I found several chunks that were loose when I started pulling the frets. There's a big hunk here that glued back down before I pulled the frets. Another one here. This section right here was actually missing. A few chips here and here. Right here, see if we can get a good look at that. See if I can get it to come out. Right here was another chip that had been knocked loose, and they just hammered the fret back down in to hold it in. A few more chips, some more missing sections that had to be filled. So we've got it fairly solid and contained at this point. I'll find out more when I hit the sandpaper trying to level these spots up. There's actually a few humps. I'll show you those in a few because I'm about to mark those out. We're just getting started on the leveling process here. You'll see what I've done. These white marks indicate high spots on the fingerboard. Doesn't look like a lot, but this is just the beginning, and this is our really high spots. So what we're not showing you here is the area between these marks is a nasty dip. This is a nasty hump in the middle of the neck. We've got a hump here and here, high spot here, high spot here. So we'll start leveling this up and see how it all works out. I spend a lot of time chewing up the fingerboards to make sure that they are level before I start putting frets in to keep from filing off extra amounts of metal that's unnecessary. So, we'll be back. We're back. It's been a couple hours since we left. At this point we have the fingerboard all chewed up and leveled. They come out really nice. I have cleaned out the fret slots and chamfered the tops of those slightly. I have cut and fitted my frets. They're all ready. They've been beveled, pre-bent, ends trimmed. They're all set. So our next move here is to start putting frets in. At this point, we've moved back to the neck jig. I have installed all the frets, trimmed and beveled the edges, actually sanded and buffed the edges along with the binding to kind of clean it up. Our chips that we repaired are pretty much invisible at this point. They're going to really disappear once we get the fingerboard cleaned up and oiled after we're finished. I like to install the frets off the jig. It gives me more access to the neck, and I always like to rejig afterwards because you get a slight compression even with the way I press the frets in. I try to have as little pressure deflecting the trued fingerboard that I just spent all that time doing as possible. So I have my own little way of fitting the frets. So it did deflect the neck probably about 5/1000ths of an inch, and I rejigged it, set it all up. So at this point we're ready to level the frets, dress the frets, get it all ready, and we will be winding this down. Well, here we are, we're finished. We've managed to restore this guitar back to its former glory. All parts are good. We have the vibrola back on, and it actually works fairly well. We've taken care of the pickups. They've been mounted properly. These little bolts here have been replaced on both pickups to be correct. The replacement cover I've kind of roughed up a little bit to kind of make it similar to the front one so it doesn't scream new cover. Our fret job came out really well. We have a new bone nut. I left the replacement tuners on. They're actually a pretty good set of tuners. The originals were bent a little bit, and this way the guitar can be played without worrying about the original buttons chipping off. So you still got the original tuners in the case. The binding cleaned up fairly well. I retinted it a little bit to get the amber look back to it. After removing most of the file marks, couldn't get rid of all of them. Some of it actually at this point looks like honest wear and tear. I mean, you know, the guitar has been beaten around a little bit. You see our fret ends look a whole lot better. I cleaned the electronics, tightened up the jack. The jack was sprung a little bit. These guitars use a special little tiny short jack. These and Firebirds use the same jack where a regular Switchcraft jack will not fit, so you need to take a lot of care with the original jack. So, I've adjusted everything up. It's all good. I'm going to talk to the owner, let him know what his bill is, and we will see this little guy go home this weekend. So, till next time, later.